Hi everyone, welcome to this new video that I wanted to show about Bitcoin and the Wyckoff method. There have been a lot of questions coming in, and I think it's good to take some time to explain this in a bit more detail than what we normally do on the website or on Twitter. So what we're looking at here, Wyckoff is probably one of the first chartists ever, one of the most prominent ones from born in the 1800s, and he studied the stock markets and the cycles of the stock markets. He studied especially the periods where you have overbought conditions and where you have oversold conditions and what happens in between, and how to recognize when you're at the top and when you're at the bottom. And timing those things ideally would be the best way to make money, obviously. And this is something that a lot of new investors don't really study. They don't look into cycles. They don't look into where are we in the cycle. They just see something that's going up and they want to be part of that. So this method is so critical, and I think everyone should understand it. So what you see here, you have a distribution phase here in the top here, which is what we've seen. Let's assume that this is the Wyckoff method that we're following and that we have seen the peak. That's basically the assumption that we make. I don't believe necessarily that is true, but let's assume for argument's sake that is the case. Then we've seen the distribution phase, which was basically the peaks at above 50 and 64k. There were 3 peaks, and the last one was actually 60. The highest one was 64k. After that, we saw a bit of a lower peak. I will take you to the chart later on. But what you see here is you see a distribution pattern where supply of a certain asset on the market is greater than the demand, and then you get a breakdown, which it goes through support. And then you get a throwback, which is testing, or flipping, as I call it, flipping support into resistance. So the support line becomes a resistance line, and from there you go down, you get the markdown phase. In the middle you see a redistribution, and then you get a correction, and then it goes up again. So assuming that we have seen the top, which I'm not sure, but then I want to just show you what the scenario would look like. I'll take you to the Bitcoin chart here. Now, let me take this one here. That's more important. Okay, I'll put it online here, and then what we can see is that we've had this high here, which was at 57.5. Then we had another high in March at 60, and then we had another high at 63.5. Then we had a lower high at 58.9, and you can already recognize this head and shoulder. It's a head and shoulders pattern, which should have actually flagged up as a concern. But then again, we all believe that Bitcoin can only go up, as we do with many assets, and the same thing with the gold bugs. They also believe that gold can only go up, and then it corrects, and then you get a lot of people losing money. So what we see here is we see a distribution phase which is above, I think it's above this level, but it could be above this level actually. Anyway, it's a long phase where you get a fight between buyers and suppliers. There's basically almost a balance between buyers and suppliers, buyers and sellers. And then you get the breakdown phase, and from the breakdown phase you get into some kind of a consolidation here. And that is actually an interesting point, because from here we need to determine what we're going to do. Now, if we take it back to the previous high in 2017, then you'd probably see that from here, I can probably take you there. Let me just zoom a little bit into 2017. Not sure what's happening here actually. Oh, this is the wrong chart. I've got the Binance chart here, which doesn't show the history. But in 2017, what we saw is that from this level here, we went very quickly up to the resistance level, the previous support level, which is here drawn at 45,000, and then we've got one level here, which I think is the more important level at 48.5k. So from here on, we should go very quickly up if we follow that breakdown that we had in 2018, in January, February 2018, that would not be a good scenario. If we go very quickly up to that level, that is not a good scenario, because it means we're more than likely to put a new high in place there and then continue our descent downwards to wherever it may be, maybe 10,000, 15, 20,000, who knows. What we'd rather see is something a little bit more gradual. So something that looks a bit like what we've seen in January. You get a high, you get a lower high, and then you go down to a new low, which we've had now as well. Then you get some kind of a balance between buyers and sellers again, and from there on the buyers are starting to believe in it, because the indicators are also recovering. As you can see here, at this point you see the MACD bottoming out, and you see that grow slowly but gradually that goes up again, and then you get a continuation of the bull trend. Now let me also have a look at this chart here. I'll show you this. I'll put in the candles here, just to have a look at some of the other corrective phases that we've seen. We've seen one here in the beginning of January that I just talked about. Now, one thing to note is that from the top to the low you have 14 bars here, and then from the low until it reaches the high, the previous high again, it takes you 17 bars. That the same thing happens here. You see 7 bars of a correction, and then 11 bars to get back up to the new high, or maybe even 13 if you take this one here. 12 bars correction here, 19 bars to get back to the new high. Now where we are now, we have 35 bars of a correction, which is a very long correction, longer than all the previous ones together. But I think if we continue the bull trend, let's look at that scenario, then this would actually be a very, very favorable thing to happen, because if you believe this stock to flow model and you believe that we are going to go up to 200,000, 250,000, whatever, no one knows, then normally you should get a shakeout of weak hands, paper hands as they call them, and that shakeout is when you get a redistribution to stronger hands, to people who actually buy dips. So you shake out the weak players who basically are scared, and then you take over their assets for a low price. That is basically what happens in markets. It's all manipulation. It's a zero-sum game. Someone wins, the other one loses. This is how it happens. So what I'd rather see than a quick retest of the resistance levels here, I would rather see that this plays out more gradually, as we've seen in January. So you go to a new low, and then gradually it goes up towards the old high. So this, if we would get a similar scenario, rather than testing the support levels this week or next week, we would actually have a very, very boring phase where we basically trade within support and resistance here, maybe 40,500 and 34,500 within that phase for a couple more days. And eventually we start breaking out of that and we start going up, and then it would look more something like this, and then you'll see it going up. Now that would be an ideal scenario. That would be much more preferable to seeing this happen. If you see this happening, then it's bad news. So these are the two scenarios that many people are looking at, and if you believe the Wyckoff method, then it's still a choice between, is this a correction or is this actually a trend reversal? I hope we are going to a very boring, slow and gradual accumulation of buyers again, and then we'll probably see this playing out. So that is basically what I wanted to show. This is what I will be watching, and if this plays out in the way I like it, then it could take until July or something before we reach the new highs, the old highs, let's say. And then, yeah, where we can go then, that all depends on how overbought we're going to be. In the end, we have been overbought quite a bit in the weekly chart. If you look at the daily chart, you can look at the RSI here at the bottom. We were very overbought in January. We actually reached 88, which is quite a high level, and then we've seen lower tops here. We've seen at 80, and then we saw one here at 74 and one at 66. And the same thing happened with the bottoms. We had a bottom here at 42, then a higher one actually, and then a lower one at 44. Oh, sorry, slightly lower than the previous one. And then we went all the way to 30, and that should have already been an indication that we were out of the bullish trend, because once you are reaching a level below 35, you should assume that you're out of the bullish trend. Then we also saw some bounces on 55. I've seen it all happening and I didn't act on it. It is unbelievable, and I should literally, this is completely by the book. And the thing that clouds me most actually is the stock to flow model, because you tend to believe that, yeah, we've had so many corrections and now it will go back to the new high and to the old high, and we will probably go to 200k, and you sit it out. In the end, what I did is I didn't sell a whole lot. I sold all my altcoins. I didn't sell Bitcoin. I think altcoins, if the favorable scenario plays out, we might be able to accumulate altcoins at this level again. I'm slowly but gradually doing that, but I first need to know by this week and next week what's going to happen. If it is a very slow and gradual move up and down, then I'd be able to probably increase my altcoin exposure again. But let's see how that plays out. I think we have reached a low. We've now seen an RSI reading at 22, which is really oversold. So whichever way you look at it, it is incredibly oversold, and it will go up. There will be a recovery. Whether it's fast or slow, it doesn't matter. We will see a recovery, and we will reach one of these levels here. Now, once we reach that level, that's where we need to pay attention, and that's where we need to decide what we're going to do. Are we going to hold or are we going to sell? So, two scenarios. Let's see how it plays out, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please click on like to support me, and also watch my videos more often, and hopefully we can catch up soon again. Alright, all the best.